Hi, my name is Hugues Theoret, Senior Associate for Sussex Strategy Group. Welcome again to our federal election show. We have the pleasure to have with us today Jonathan Dickey, the National Campaign Manager of the Green Party. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
You're a busy man, eh? I don't think you have lots of vacation this summer.
No vacation, not in quite a long time.
Exactly. So you have a big challenge. Big challenge is coming up very soon. So you joined the Green Party and you accepted the position of a National Campaign Manager in December 2018. So tell us what were your motivations? Why did you accept that position?
Well, I've worked for Elizabeth May for quite a few years now, 10 years, in several different roles. But I ran her first successful campaign in Saanich Gulf Islands in 2011 and have been involved in a number of campaigns since then. So when it was discussed with me about this role this time, it seemed like a good time to take on that challenge.
That's great. That is great. So, the surveys give the Green Party an average of 10, 12, well, 13% of support across the country. That puts the Green Party almost on a par with the NDP. How would you explain the rise in the popularity of the Greens in the poll across the country?
It comes at a really good time for us. At this time in 2015, we were sitting at about 5 to 7% in national polling. So for this time for us to be at 10 to 12% really gives us a much better position to be entering the federal election this fall. As far as the reason for that, there has been some momentum since the spring. There was a by-election in BC in Nanaimo Ladysmith, which we won in May, and that might have helped drive some of that momentum. We've also since 2015 we've elected provincially a number of other MLAs. So I think that voters are seeing that the Green Party is more and more a viable party that can win. We're seeing, especially in Europe, we're seeing Greens win a larger and larger share of seats in some of those countries and the EU in general. And then there's the issue, especially the issue of climate change, and that's since it's just growing in public consciousness that's a major issue that needs to be dealt with. So I think all of those factors. It's always hard to distinguish exactly what the factor is.
But more awareness of the effect of climate change on the environment. Would you say that really affect the polls and give you a
We're starting
push?
Yeah, what we're starting to see is in national polls as we look at the issues that Canadians care about. Climate change was always 6, 7, 8 in there, but not the top issues.
Not the top.
We're starting to see climate change top issue, top 3, and when climate change starts to be a top 3 issue, there's just more voters who will start to look at the Green Party as an option. And really, it doesn't need to be that many voters to make a fairly major difference. Elections can swing on fairly small percentages.
And would you say we see the rising of popularity of the Greens in Europe. Just last spring, the last European Parliament election, they elected 70 new seats compared to the last elections. I think they were like something like 30 to 37. Would you say that also give you like a support? Does it have an influence on the popularity of the Green in Canada?
I think a little bit. I'm not sure how the average Canadian, how much they follow European politics, but it helps a little bit to see, on the news, maybe a short segment about European election results and how well the Greens did and how well they're doing in Germany. That filters into people's minds a little bit. I think also we have a leader who's been around now for a decade plus and has been very consistent on that issue, and so we're lining up with that issue being a top concern for Canadians, and having a leader who's been very consistent on that. That's been one of her top issues. And so I think that for a lot of voters, that in this election experience will help consistency. That does mean something to voters.
Yeah. Your support is over 20% in British Columbia, where you have 2 seats at the House of Commons. The seat of your leader, Elizabeth May, for sure. But what's the situation of the Green Party elsewhere in the country, in other provinces right now?
Yeah, so we definitely have a base of support, especially in Vancouver Island, when we look at our internal polling and then other polling that's available to us. Definitely, we've got a core support there, and we'll win seats there, more seats there. But then, as we look on the mainland of BC, there will be opportunities there for us as well. But in other parts of Canada, especially provincially, where we've elected Greens, that's a little bit of a hurdle for us to cross in any riding, is for voters to elect a Green at any level and then see that it does work out for them, that electing a Green doesn't, that member of the legislature will do a good job. And so what we've seen since 2011, 2013, we started to elect Green MLAs in BC. Right. When they've come up for re-election, every time they get re-elected by a much higher margin. So we're seeing that voters, once they've elected a Green, are satisfied with the results, and then they'll consider doing it at another level.
You also did really well in PEI, the last election.
So PEI, New Brunswick.
It came close, eh? It came really close.
And that was a really interesting situation for us, because they went into that campaign near the top in polling, and there was a lot of expectations there, and they ended up with 8 seats, and yet there's a little bit of disappointment, because there was the expectation that
expectations were really higher, let's say.
So for us, we've our expectations are starting to go up all the time now. A decade ago, we would have been happy with any win anywhere, and now we're expecting more and more as we develop as a party.
Raising the bar, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So you can jump higher.
Yeah.
So as a Green Party National Campaign Director, how are you preparing for the upcoming elections? I mean, in terms of organization, priorities. So tell us about it.
We're still a small organization. Mm-hmm. We still have a limited resources, especially compared to the Conservatives and the Liberals. The NDP, we're really starting to catch up in fundraising. And in the second quarter, we slightly surpassed them just by thousands of dollars, but still, that's an accomplishment for us. So we're starting to see, as an organization, we're developing, we're building more capacity internally. Our organization is growing, and so to prepare for this election, we, on one hand, we want to elect a number of more MPs. We're identifying those ridings, and we're getting the resources on the ground in those ridings. On the other hand, we also want to focus on our popular support right across the country.
Right.
That's also a strong indication of growth for us. And so we want to do a good job with our national campaign and really build support right across the country. So.
Right. So we are today August 8th, and 11 weeks, I think, away from the election. So how many candidates, can you tell us how many candidates you have confirmed yet across the country?
As of yesterday, it was 231.
Which is really good.
We're about 68% on track with what our plans have been. We will have candidates in all 338 ridings. Right. The difference for us this time is, compared with 2015, compared with 2011, we have more and more candidates. We have less and less paper candidates, more and more real candidates who want to run real campaigns. And for us, that's a real show of how much support we're attracting right across the country. Because there used to be places in Canada where
Yeah.
we really had a hard time finding a candidate, right? And
I
now
believe.
we're really we're finding candidates everywhere who really believe in what our party offers.
Yeah, I saw just because I'm from Quebec, but in Outremont you have Daniel Green, and he's very well known. Not only in Quebec, in Montreal, he's very well known across Canada. So he's that type of candidates that will help for us.
Yeah,
His popularity, more popular, his visibility, so people know Daniel Green. It's just
and we're very lucky to have him as deputy leader. We see opportunity in Quebec. Quebec is a more dynamic province as far as voter shifting. In other parts of Canada, voters tend to shift. You don't get those quick shifts like the NDP in 2011. And so we see opportunity in Quebec this time.
Well, just yesterday, your leader, Elizabeth May, has unveiled a plan to help workers in the gas and oil sector transition to a renewable energy economy. How do you think that plan will help the Green Party to gain seats, not only BC, but in the West, across the country? So what's your view on it?
Often we get unfairly criticized as being focused just on the environment, or just that's our only issue, and we are focused on that at the expense of jobs and the economy. I'm from Nova Scotia. That's where I was born and raised, and many of my classmates from high school and university, they ended up going to Alberta, oil and gas jobs, and that was opportunity for them to increase their standard of living and just provide for their families. It's opportunity, and so we need to deal with the issue of climate change. We need to shift off of fossil fuels, but we also we want Canadians to continue to have economic opportunity, so that if people are apply themselves, work hard, they do well. And so we don't want to take away those opportunities, but those opportunities will need to shift, and that's what we need to do.
In the Atlantics, we saw about the coal phase out and the promotion of renewable energy. So what type of renewable energy would you prioritize? I would say more than wind energy, solar. What would be?
It'll be a mix, but really wind. There's a lot of places in Canada where we can develop more wind.
Offshore,
right?
even in the
offshore, prairies. There's so
it's a
much
windy
potential.
country.
It is. It's a large country. It's a large country, right? But there's also work that needs to be done into our grid to prepare for that. So there's lots of economic opportunity here as we shift away.
So climate change, environment, as you mentioned, your positions to pipelines in the West, but all across the country are basically your priorities. But of course, you have the Green Party has other priorities. So what are they, and on what themes do you plan to campaign for October 21st?
So definitely climate change is that major issue. But there's also, we also understand that Canadians deal with economic pressures. A lot of people live from paycheck to paycheck. And so there's issues like pharmacare, universal dental health care.
I saw it.
The things that benefit all Canadians. And we're very focused on for young people, the cost of tuition. We've got a younger generation that's really struggling economically, and that there are some changes that will be some parts of our platform that will be focusing on that as well. There's also the shift into the baby boomer generation is definitely shifting out of the workforce.
Yeah.
And that's going to create some problems, not problems, but changes, right, that need to be dealt with. And so we just need to anticipate that that we're dealing with a number of major demographic shifts right now that we need to consider and prepare for.
And am I wrong? But I've seen the polls, and it seems to me that the Green Party would be the second choice of many Canadians right now in the polls. How would you do to convince Canadians to make the Green Party their first choice? on the next election?
It's always been a struggle for us because there are parts of our policies that appeal to lots of Canadians, but they've not seen us as a viable choice because of our lack of a track record of getting elected, and so we're starting to show more and more that we can be elected, and so that has been a major barrier for voters in the past. Becoming less so, and I think that's why we're starting to rise in the polls.
Right. And as you mentioned, the role of the leader as well, because, well, Madame Elizabeth Mays, right now we can say she's very well known, and that will be her fourth elections. Am I right or wrong? As a leader.
Yeah, as the leader in the general election, it's 08, 11, 15. You're right. Yeah.
And she participated in the debates. She did really well, and I know that you had to fight for it to have your spot at the debate. Yeah. But now we don't have a three party national party anymore. We have 4 national.
We're starting to see that shift, right?
Yeah,
we're noticing that ourselves. In the past, we used to have to fight to be taken seriously. There were the major 3 parties, and we used to be left aside, and we'd have to kind of fight our way in for inclusion. Now we're seeing ourselves just referred to as one of the 4 major national parties. In this election, it is her fourth federal election. And we actually have a really interesting comparison between her and the 3 other party leaders, where they're all men in their 40s, young 40s, right?
Young 40s.
Early 40s.
Yeah.
And so that actually creates quite a nice contrast, we think, for ourselves. Yeah. So we've got this experienced woman who's got a lot of experience compared with some younger men, which those parties will also they'll portray that as an advantage. But we like what she brings to.
And talking about Madame May, she talk a lot about she insists a lot on the reconciliations with Indigenous people. So tell us about it. Why it's so important for the Green Party to reconciliate with the Indigenous communities in the country?
It is that's a underlying problem in our country right now. The poverty, First Nations communities, the relationship between the rest of Canada, First Nations community, that's a problem that needs to be dealt with. We can't continue to go on as a country and have these pockets of Canadians who are living in poverty. So we see that as a high priority.
Yeah. So last question, Jonathan. So federal political parties have a lot of ambition for the upcoming elections. That's normal. It's like when you're practicing sports. You play to win, not to lose. So where do you see the Green Party on October 21st? And how many seats do you expect to get? Do you have the targets, or?
We have some targets, and those shift as we continue to increase in polls. But we see that we could win 5 more seats, and perhaps up to 10, 15, depending on how things go. So we're preparing for a number of scenarios, but we've identified some ridings that we think that we can win this time. But really, things can shift quite quickly. We like one of the major issues that seems to be a ballot box issue this time, and we think we're well positioned to take advantage of that.
We saw what happened in 2011 with the NDP, especially in Quebec. So we never know. So the Green Party might be surprise people. Yeah. So Jonathan, Dickey, thank you very much for your time, and wish you the best of luck for the next election.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to talk.